Hello and welcome to the Northern Road Link live presentation and Q&A live streaming event. My name is Don Parkinson and I am a consultation specialist with S&C Lavalin, who along with Dillon Consulting Limited are the technical team for the Northern Road Link environmental assessment. The proponents of the NRL environmental assessment are Martin Falls First Nation and Webequie First Nation. Tonight and tomorrow, February 24th, at the same time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we will be updating you on where we currently are in the project and responding to any questions or comments you have relating to the project. The evening will begin with a presentation followed by a Q&A session. And before we go any further, I wanted to introduce the two project co-leads, one of which happens to be right beside me, Mr. Michael Fox. Michael, how are you tonight? Excellent. And then live via satellite from his home office is Mr. Qasim Sadiq. Hello, Qasim.
Hi, Don.
Great to have you both here. And later, after the presentation, I will introduce the rest of our technical team, or at least a subset of our technical team, and we can open that discussion afterwards. So, without further ado, I think we'll go to the presentation. If we can get that up on the screen for our technical team. Can bring that up on the screen. Before we go any further, this is an interactive session, and so we have a call or text number at 1-844-424-0500. That's 1-844-424-0500. You can call or text us with any questions you have, and then we will address those after the presentation. So let's now move to the presentation and start off with the slide of the Chief's messages. If we can bring that up on the screen. Thank you. And so what I thought we would do before we continue with this is have each of the chiefs from each community, Martin Falls and Webequie, will play their video messages relating to the project, and then we'll come back and continue with the presentation. So let's lead off with Chief Bruce from Martin Falls, and then we'll follow with Chief Cornelius of Webequie First Nation. So if our technical team can bring up Chief Bruce's video, we have that. So let's watch that, and then we'll come back, and then we'll listen to Chief Cornelius, and we'll come back and continue.
We're looking at our own rights as a First Nation. Our right to economic self-sufficiency, as our forefathers had done for millennia, and it seems that we can't move forward with that in any sort of way previous to that. So this sort of offers us an opportunity to put all our thoughts and all our actions, all our sense of working together with our team and with our community to build something that's that we should be proud of in the future, and that we're going to use every day, and that's infrastructure. So we find that an opportunity to build a road into the Ring of Fire means an opportunity for our First Nation to have a meaningful engagement with the governments, government of Ontario and Canada, and also engagement with the business sector, the mining sector. So we find it something that we can move forward with our neighboring First Nation Webque First Nation. We have an opportunity to lead an environmental assessment, and as such, it's a huge opportunity for our First Nation. And our people have been training for the past 5-6 years now with Matua and their with their training programs with Matua training. I forget the name, but they provide a lot of training, and our youth have received a lot of training, and a lot of them have achieved grade 12, and they're looking for something to move on to, and we have to create those opportunities for our youth now that a lot of them have gotten that basic education and basic training education in mining field, had a way to achieve success so that our people can be successful too.
Yeah, the way of life, the better way of life I'm talking about is, having, better housing, better roads in our community, better, communication systems in our community, and, better services in our community, including health and education, and all those that will make our community better as it is now. We lack infrastructure for our education buildings, education school buildings. We're overcrowded, and same with our health infrastructure. We're overcrowded. Our nurses that come to our community, they're overcrowded. There's only a certain amount of nurses that can come to our community at any time. And then we have, limited access to, doctor, and other services like dental and vision. The EA processes that we're doing is to determine, the feasibility and also the impacts to make sure that we don't overlook any impacts that may be created from developing a road in our area. And the environmental assessment has to be done in a proper way, in a manner that's satisfactory to the First Nations, even the surrounding First Nations, and we have to work closely together. So it is a good opportunity, to work together. The purpose of trying to develop the North is for our communities to prosper, as we develop, and make sure that we have, the real benefits for our community.
Okay, we're back, and before we go any further, I just wanted to remind our viewers to call us or text us at 1-844-424-0500 with your questions or comments. And that's 1-844-424-0500, and we will handle those after the presentation. So I will continue on with the presentation now after the Chief's messages. Let's just move now to the next slide and talk about the project background, the evolution of the project. So Martin Falls and Webequie are two remote Indigenous communities, and by that we mean they're not currently accessible by an all-season road. And both communities are committed to sustainable development of their territories. In 2018, Martin Falls started collecting information on previous studies done on a potential road that would connect their community with the Ring of Fire to the north. Uh, there were a few community level events that were used as sort of a vehicle to present this information that had been assembled and to get some feedback from community members. And as a result, a few alternatives were developed, linking the community with the Ring of Fire, and some historic previous alternatives were sort of adjusted or amended to take into account community values. This background work sort of formed the foundation or starting point for the Northern Road Link project. And then in 2020, March of 2020, the province of Ontario, Martin Falls, and Webequie First Nation announced an agreement to work together on the Northern Road Link project. So, if we can move to the next slide, which is what will NRL include. So, if this is an all-season road, it is planned to be a gravel road, and the length of the road would range between 117 and 164 kilometers, depending on which mix of alternatives would be selected. The cleared area would be 60 meters, and there would be a 100-meter right-of-way. So, in terms of the width of the road, it's actually, I should correct it's not 20 meters wide, it's 11.5 meters wide, and it will be undivided lanes with shoulders and ditches when required. Of course, there will be numerous water crossings. One major water crossing, that being the crossing at the Attawapiskat River. There will be several smaller bridges and numerous culverts as part of this. As part of the project itself. Now, with a road like this, it's not just a road. Typically, um, you need to access the material to build the road, and these would be, we would use uh, other infrastructure such as borrow areas, aggregate sources, and quarry sites to provide material to both build the road and maintain the road as well afterwards. Some of these will be temporary, some of these will be permanent. As part of doing this work, there would be temporary access roads and temporary water crossings built to these temporary facilities. There would also be, during construction, there would be a need for temporary work areas and construction camps, lay down areas for equipment and materials. If we go to the next slide describing the project team. Okay. So the project team, it's a relatively simple hierarchy. We have the chiefs, the chief and council of both communities. There's a Northern Road Link working group, which includes representatives of both communities. And then, and I introduced the two project co-leads. They serve as sort of the management team, project management team at the strategic level. They deal with issues such as issue management, process management, political management, and consultation management for this very large project. And then they also oversee the technical team, which is S&C Lavalin and Dillon Consulting Limited. So they would be managing the contracts associated with the technical teams executing the environmental assessment. And as I mentioned, the project co-leads are Michael Fox and Qasim Sadiq, and the working group consists of Lawrence Baxter, Elena Downey Baxter, Roy Spence, and Gordon Wabas. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is the NRL project is one of 3 all-season road projects in the immediate area. It sits between the Webequie Supply Road to the north and the Martin Falls Community Access Road to the south. So it links to the east end of the proposed Webequie Supply Road, to the north end of the proposed Martin Falls Community Access Road, and all 3 projects are undergoing separate environmental assessments, and these projects will all be engineered as all-season roads. Next slide, please. So a preliminary study area has been developed for the project. You see it outlined. Basically, that's a sort of a buffered area around the existing corridors, corridor alternatives, and which explains the sort of the funny looking shape there that you see on your screen. So the NRL project, as I mentioned, will connect the Ring of Fire mineral deposits in the McFalls Lake area to the all-season highway network at the south end of the Martin Falls Community Access Road. And the NRL project the intent of it is to enable economic activity by facilitating the transport of goods, services, and resources. If we can move to the next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 12 alternative corridor segments, and this map shows all 12 segments in different colors and fill patterns. And with various segment combinations combined together, a route would be formed. But right now, at this point, we have these different alternatives that are being evaluated. Criteria have been developed and will be developed further to evaluate these alternatives, looking at the advantages and disadvantages of the various alternatives or segment alternatives or alternative segments. So that process will go on. So the actual route has not been finalized. What we're talking about right now is corridors, which are, I believe, 2 kilometers wide. So there's no definitive, right now, no definitive center line position for this road. And that will all come out as part of the environmental assessment process. So let's move to the next slide in terms of where we are in the provincial TOR process. So you may have seen this graphic before, and without going into too much detail, where we are now in the process is we have, I believe at the end of January, I think it was January 28th, the period within which draft TOR comments uh, were received. So we received those comments up until the 28th of January, and our team is currently very busy in the process of responding to those comments, making amendments to the draft terms of reference. And then once these have been dealt with satisfactorily, the proposed TOR will then be submitted to the ministry, MECP, for a decision. So we are expecting to have the proposed TOR ready in late winter, early spring, so fairly soon. So that is where we currently stand in the process, in the regulatory process, on the provincial side at least. And so during that time, the draft TOR review period, we received a number of comments. The comments came from the mining industry. They came from Indigenous communities as well. And so what I thought I would do is just do a quick run through of some of the comments that we have received. In terms of mining industry comments, we received comments on the regional assessment, asking about the relationship between the environmental assessment for the Northern Road Link and environmental assessment or impact assessment process, and the regional assessment for the Ring of Fire that's being conducted by the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. We also received a number of comments from the mining industry on future mine development activities. And so those comments were related to things like making sure that the road avoids areas that are high priority exploration areas for the mining company or areas of planned mining infrastructure. And so we received a number of comments in that area. Um, we received comments ensuring that the location of the road helps service future exploration and resource development opportunities. We received comments about the termination of the Northern Road Link at the Mukatai airstrip, um, which is the airstrip that sits at the Noront, right near the Noront Eagle's Nest mine or development site or exploration area. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Some other mining industry comments were the need for an expedited project schedule that would very efficiently and quickly help facilitate road and resource development. It was to facilitate resource development um, to allow the greatest benefit to community members in neighboring communities. In other words, create jobs faster. That was basically the comment we received from the mining industry. Uh, there was a request for a more detailed construction plan, a more definitive construction plan to help resource development to advance with greater confidence. So to give believe the market more confidence that things were going to move ahead in a time frame, in a specified time frame. There were also comments on making use of existing winter roads and other temporary infrastructure to allow mining lease or claim holders in the Ring of Fire area to keep working and expand their exploration efforts. Cumulative effects assessment. Um, the mining industry was interested in ensuring that the cumulative effects assessment includes what they consider to be reasonably foreseeable projects. So projects that they think are reasonably likely to happen. In terms of road construction, the mining industry was looking for sort of an estimate of workforce requirements for the construction and operation of the road, uh, as well as sort of a community skills or capacity assessment in order to maximize the participation of neighboring Indigenous communities in the project, whether it's in the construction phase or later on in the operations phase. And then there were also comments on road construction techniques, um, considering the sensitivity of the James Bay lowlands, the use of appropriate road building techniques, and the need for compliance with relevant guidelines as well. If we can move to the next slide, please. So let's move now to the Indigenous community comments. There were a number of Indigenous community comments covering a number of different subjects. One of them was greater involvement in the project by other First Nations beyond the two proponent First Nations, beyond Martin Falls and Webquay First Nation. Um, and that involvement, there was a desire for it to occur at future project milestones. There was a desire for more nation to nation format project discussions. So between the leadership of Martin Falls and Webquay First Nation and other communities in the region, there was a request for that. There was a request for more involvement in the evaluation of alternative methods to ensure that advantages and disadvantages are viewed through a First Nations lens other than that of the two proponents, Webquay and Martin Falls as well. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So some other areas where we had comments from Indigenous communities were input on alternatives, water crossings, alignment of the road, aggregate sources. So other communities wanted more input on the types of crossing structures, whether it's the span length, the location of the crossing structure, road alignment, aggregate extraction areas, just more involvement in general in the specifics of the project by other communities. And communities also wanted what they described as a disaggregated approach to reporting the results of the input First Nations. So in other words, they wanted their comments to be clearly identified and attributed to their particular community as opposed to aggregated together as one. There were a number of comments on Aboriginal and treaty rights and interest. Uh, one of the comments was that the terms of reference and subsequent consultation with an engagement plan should be written to adhere to the most stringent requirements associated with the most stringent of the two regulations, basically the federal and provincial regulations. If we can move to the next slide, please. So there were also a number, continuing along with Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests. There was a statement. A couple of communities, I think, made a comment that Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous land and resource use are components of the rights and interests of First Nations, but don't represent all of the rights present in the project area. And they were arguing that these rights extend beyond the harvesting rights and omit other types of rights like cultural rights and other rights of importance. There was a comment that preliminary valued components associated with Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests should include other indicators or measuring tools, such as for like use of Indigenous use of land and resources valued component, availability and fragmentation of land for rights-based activities and other interests. So using that as a measure, or perception of availability of land for rights-based activities as well. You can move to the next slide, please. Continuing along with Aboriginal and treaty rights and interest, preliminary valued components associated with cultural continuity and well-being. There were comments on that. They suggested, community members suggested that an indicator be cultural landscapes and safe access to travel routes for the actual practicing of rights. And there was a proposed new valued component that was put forward, which was governance. And then the indicator for that proposed valued component would be changes to Indigenous authority and jurisdiction through the imposition of colonial regulatory processes. If we can go to the next slide, please. And then in terms of some other subject areas where we received comments, of course, given the pandemic, we are just working our way through now. There were comments on COVID accommodation, requesting a flexibility of approaches and timelines in relation to the pandemic, due to sort of the impacts, the huge impacts of the pandemic response. We received comments on valued components, weaving the Indigenous knowledge into the assessment. There was a statement that all components of the physical, biological, and social environments must be assessed in an integrated manner to ensure that Indigenous knowledge and information related to Indigenous rights is woven into that process. So making sure that IK is built into every aspect of the environmental assessment or impact assessment. Talking about a pathway analysis, ensuring a pathway analysis was included, and then input. There was a request by First Nations, other than the proponents, to provide input into the baseline conditions or mitigation measures and residual effects, follow-up strategies for each VC. So generally a request for greater involvement in that process. If we can go to the next slide, please. We also received comments on odor, stating that odor should be considered and assessed as part of the air quality assessment. As you know, diesel-powered construction vehicles can generate odors and have the potential to alter the environment by increasing avoidance behaviors and negative perceptions picked up by harvesters and land users. And then, of course, climate change was a big topic of some of the comments. The climate change assessment, the statement was that climate change assessment must also consider Indigenous perspectives and Indigenous knowledge to ensure a holistic view is taken and applied. And then comments on commitments and monitoring, and making sure that the commitments and monitoring related to potential impacts to Indigenous rights and interests are developed as well, and included in this monitoring plan and truly assessed for their effectiveness. There were comments on noise related to communities other than the proponent communities, helping to select locations for sensitive receptors, noise receptors for the project. There were comments regarding fish, wildlife, and vegetation existing species lists to ensure that that communities other than the proponent communities could provide input as to the species list to be investigated as part of the work. There was a comment about the health assessment, um, which was an interesting comment, recommending that the health assessment should model a self-sufficient Indigenous receptor in relation to country food harvest and assess potential future safety concerns of Indigenous harvesters, and that for any food tissue sampling programs, that organ meat of different species be sampled as well, because these are eaten as well. So it just to represent it as being, to make it a more realistic exercise. So that is sort of a high level summary of the comments received. We're going to get into this a little bit further as we move through tonight's presentation or tonight's event. I wanted to tell everyone that we're now moving towards the proposed tour review period. As I mentioned before, we've received the draft tour comments. We're responding to the draft tour comments, making amendments to the terms of reference, and so the proposed tour will be submitted shortly. It's important that you as community members and the general public as well participate in this period. Uh, we encourage you to participate in this. It's important that you participate in this to help shape that terms of reference and ensure that the environmental assessment is as comprehensive as it possibly can be, because it shapes that document. And if we can move to the next slide, just to give people an idea of what happens after your comments are received. For each comment that we receive, we prepare responses. Based on these comments, changes to the TOR or terms of reference, which is the work plan for the environmental assessment, are often made where they're deemed necessary. The whole purpose of the process is to hear from those potentially affected by the project and ensure that the terms of reference is a comprehensive, robust work plan for the EA going forward, and that will very comprehensively evaluate the impact of the project. And before I wrap up the presentation portion of things, I wanted to talk a little bit about capacity funding opportunities. It's recognized that Indigenous communities, because they have many other priorities and in most cases not nearly enough resources to be able to operate effectively, they're often in need of resources for activities such as terms of reference review. That's recognized. The government recognizes that, and capacity funding is available to selected communities primarily through MNDM, the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry. So additional funding will be available to selected communities for the collection of Indigenous knowledge activities as well. So if we move to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what comes next in this process. So the proposed tour, as I mentioned, will be finalized in late winter, early spring of this year, then submitted to MECP. MECP will make the proposed tour available for formal review and comment. During and after that prescribed review and comment period, we will respond again to comments and incorporate the feedback, make any adjustments to the tour if necessary, then submit the proposed tour to MECP for the minister's decision. The proposed tour will either be accepted with changes, or rejected. So if we can move to the next slide, that concludes the presentation portion of tonight's event. I wanted to remind everyone that they can call or text us with their questions or comments at 1-844-424-0500. That's 1-844-424-0500. And now we are ready to move to the Q&A portion of the presentation. And we will see if we have any comments. And what I also wanted to do was have a discussion on maybe go through some of the frequently asked questions that that we've received as part of this project. But maybe before we do that, I should introduce our technical team. Sorry about that, team. We have a number of other experts available to us right now who can help answer your questions. And I believe all of them are present. So I'd like to introduce everyone here, starting with Brandon Fox, who's the consultation lead. Brandon, if you can identify yourself. There you are. Yes, I can see you on my very small screen that I'm looking at. And I'd like to introduce Dan Kunsler as well. Dan Kunsler. There's Dan. There's Dan. We have so Dan is an engineering engineer, and Andrea Nokelby. Andrea, are you there? There's Andrea. Yes. I believe Charmaine has not joined us yet. Charmaine McGraw, but she will join us very shortly. And we have our project ecologist, John Plaisir. I think John is there. John, are you there? Oh, he is there. Okay, good. Sorry, John, I just couldn't see you there. So, oh, Charmaine's there too. Is she? Okay, good. Hello, Charmaine. Oh, I don't think she's moving, so she's it's a frozen image of Charmaine. Okay, why don't we have a brief discussion about some of the frequently asked questions we've received, and Michael and Qasim, feel free to jump in. And one of the questions I thought we'd put out there, and I think it's important to basically go through this. We saw the two chiefs providing some input as to the why their community wants to do this project. But maybe I'll put out that question and let you, Michael, and Qasim respond to that. So the question is, why are the two First Nations leading the Northern Road Link project? Qasim, did you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, absolutely, Don. I can start. As you know, and some of our listeners know as well, this is a remote part of Northern Ontario, and there is no existing infrastructure in the region. The communities are remote. Both Martin Falls and Webber are remote communities. So they've been thinking about and planning for infrastructure in their communities to connect to provincial highways for a very long time. When this conversation around regional development, economic development associated with the Ring of Fire started, the project was essentially in the backyard of these two communities. It is their traditional territory. So their interest in connecting to the provincial highway system for social and economic development benefits, as well as for enabling economic development in their traditional territory, led them to planning for this project. And just the lens that they bring as Indigenous nations of being stewards of the land, their sort of lens of environmental sustainability. They knew they wanted to do this right, and which better entity to trust with that than their own selves as the stewards of the land? So that is effectively the process and the long journey that brought them to being proponents of the project.
Thank you for that, Qasim. That's important, I think, for our viewers to hear that. Um, we some of the other questions we've received are okay. Here's the question I'll put out there is why are both an environmental assessment (EA) and an impact assessment (IA) being carried out for the NRL for the Northern Road Link project? Anyone want to tackle that one? No. There's two processes here. There's a federal process and there's a provincial process. And the impact assessment is the federal process, and the environmental assessment is the Ontario provincial process here. There is coordination between the two processes at certain points. There is a single document that's submitted at the end uh, as well to satisfy both regulators. Um, so that is why there are two processes going on there. Let's see if we have some other questions here. Here's an interesting one. I understand the environmental assessment is community led. What does this mean? Anyone want to tackle that one? Qasim,
Don,
do you want to tackle
I
that
can
one?
start. Yeah, I can certainly start with that. That's I think that's a really important one for Martin Falls and Webequie as well. And the project is essentially led by the two communities. What that means is that the overall formulation, the concept, the notion of the project was developed by the two communities through their leadership. The community is very intimately involved. We take pretty much all steps of the process. We engage both communities on it, get their input and direction. Get their input, which turns into direction through chief and council into this group that they've formulated, which oversees the entire process, and that is the working group. The working group has two members from Martin Falls, Lawrence Baxter and Alana Downey Baxter. And then from Webequie, we've got Roy Spence and Gordon Wapas. Now they take the direction that they receive from chief and council, and based on their knowledge of environmental assessments, because they've been involved in these processes for a very long time, so they understand the technical rigmarole of these processes, the requirements of the regulators, and the expectation of communities around consultation and engagement. And they provide that direction to Michael and myself, and together with you and the rest of the technical team here, we implement that direction. So this is effectively a process that the two communities has created, which in a way parallels. It doesn't exactly translate or reflect a traditional corporate proponency, but it reflects the process which a typical company might take, except this is an Indigenous community laying out a process based on how the community is organized, what their values are, what their requirements of a process like this are. So that is effectively that unwrapping the term of Indigenous led. It is led by the community, their direction, their decisions, and it is the job of people that they have assigned, starting with the working group, to ensure that it is implemented to their desires and direction.
Thank you, Qasim. Michael, did you want to add something?
Hi, can you can you hear me? Okay, there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I'm just speaking through my cell phone. I think the only other point I would add to what Qasim was saying is I know Webequie and Martin Falls. They understand their homelands. They're the custodians of their homelands, and environmental stewardship is primary importance to them, and not to their existing generation, but future generations as well. So that's the number one principle, and they wanted to lead this environmental assessment as a way to enhance their own views upon the principles of provincial environmental assessment, federal environmental assessments, and the Indigenous principles as well in that whole process. This is also, I would say, an exercise in self-determination, for these two communities, and looking at, decision making for themselves and where what they want to do around their homelands, as well. So I hear these type of discussions and phrases used around this project.
Thank you for that, Michael. I think we have another interesting question here that's part of our FAQ, and the question is, what are cumulative effects, and will a cumulative effects assessment be carried out for the NRL? So let me start this one. Cumulative effects are sort of the combined effects of the project that look at past projects, current projects, and reasonably foreseeable projects in the future. And so that's what they are. So we have 3 all-season road projects in the region. Each of them is going through as part of their environmental assessment. Each of them is going through a cumulative effects assessment as well. And so this will be done for the NRL, and it will look at, as I mentioned, past projects, current projects, and projects in the future. So each of these 3 projects will be doing that. And in addition, there is a regional assessment being undertaken by the by Impact Assessment Agency of Canada as well too. So here's another question that's we received quite a bit here. And maybe, Mike, I'll start with you on this one. And the question is, who will own and maintain the NRL? We're just getting Mike online here.
Hi, can you hear me? Sorry, guys. This is my use of my phones here. Who will own and who will own?
Who will own and maintain the NRL?
Yeah, so that's right now. There's a difference between the proponency of the environmental assessment, where Rich on, and the likelihood of the impact assessment. The ownership, the question, the ownership of the actual road is open to is actually under discussion between the two communities around. They're looking at possible ownership models and the like, and around that is sort of governance. So determining the type of road. In Ontario, we basically got 3 types of roads. We have provincial highways systems. We have resource roads, mining roads, and forestry roads, and then we have winter roads, or also these ice roads up in the far north of Ontario. This road is yet to be defined, and what type of road, and with that, what type of road is, who's the proponent or co-proponents of the road, and what rules will regulate that road.
Yes.
So that's still open, and we looked at models across Canada, other First Nations led owned roads, and so we're reviewing everything nationally.
Thanks for that, Mike. I have another one here, which I think is an interesting one. Community members know the land better than anyone. How will the project team be making use of this local knowledge? It's a great question. It's a great question. And Michael, you and I just discussed this not that long ago today. And Community members have special knowledge of their homeland. It's a completely different level of insight of their land than a Western scientist, so to speak. And so what we're trying to do is uh, is is try to blend Indigenous knowledge with Western science. And maybe if I can draw a bit on Andrea's expertise in this, if you don't mind, Andrea, can I get you to jump in on this one for me?
Hi there, thank you. So, as traditional stewards of the land, both Martin Falls First Nation and Webequie First Nation know that they must make certain that all development in the area is undertaken properly, and that the rights, interests, values, and traditions, concerns, and aspirations of Indigenous communities are properly addressed. Within the assessment context and during the life of the Northern Road Link project and beyond, it is in this spirit that we are going to be conducting the Indigenous Knowledge Program specific for the Northern Road Link project. The IK program is a critical component of the information base which the assessment will be conducted. The information generated through the Indigenous Knowledge Program will be used in concert with scientific approaches, and both knowledge systems will be given equal consideration in forming the foundation for baseline conditions, predicting potential project impacts, including potential impacts to communities' inherent Aboriginal rights and interests, and determining appropriate mitigation and monitoring methods. We see this as a way to empower communities to build capacity, to develop and share knowledge, and to inform the assessment. Speaking quite clearly, both Indigenous knowledge and Western science will be given equal consideration, and we acknowledge and respect that the communities know the land and that we will work together to ensure that the assessment is done accordingly.
Thanks for that, Andrea. I have another question here. Maybe I can ask Qasim to answer this one or start this one off. The question is, why is the Northern Road Link project not part of one larger project that includes the Webequie Supply Road and Martin Falls Community Access Road projects? Is this not dividing one project into three? We've received this question before, Qasim, which is why it's a frequently asked question. Maybe you can shed some light on this one for us.
Yes, absolutely, Don. I think this with time is certainly an appropriate question for Indigenous communities and members of the public to ask, because there's history, context, and rationale involved in the answer. So all three projects, starting if you start from the southern end, the Martin Falls Community Access Road, going up to the Northern Road Link, and ultimately ending sort of northwest at the Webequie Supply Road. All three projects have a very different and distinct purpose from each other. The Martin Falls Community Access Road, while it does support industrial development in the future, the primary purpose of that road is to be a community access road. Right. Similarly, WSR is an economic development road for Webequie First Nation. And the Northern Road Link's purpose is to help open up the region for future economic development projects and initiatives, but also to connect Webequie to the provincial highway. So all have different primary purposes. They have different primary drivers. Martin Falls Community Access Road is not dependent, for example, on the Northern Road Link to become developed in the future. So first reason becomes that they all have different purposes and would exist independently. So that becomes the first reason and rationale for having three different projects that look at assessment from a slightly different lens. And the conversations tend to be a little different as a result on. The second reason also is that, as Indigenous proponents, this was a work in progress when we started planning. And a lot of initiatives, a lot of processes were a function of either funding or agreements that came into being. So those two things put together ultimately meant that projects started whenever the communities were able to initiate them, because they understood that these projects have different purposes for the communities. So that's how we end up with three different projects. We believe that the assessments that are taking place as a result are deeper, are more thorough, we're able to have more focused conversations, but we're also able to sort of zoom out and talk about, for example, you just spoke of cumulative effects. We're able to do that as well. So we think it adds to the process. It doesn't necessarily take anything away. But we're also keen to hear from community members, from members of the public, from other stakeholders, what challenges they are concerned about when it comes to talking about three different projects. And I think traditionally the criticism you'll hear from members of the public or from academics and experts is around breaking a project up into different parts to ensure that to increase its likelihood of approval in the future. I don't think we have that benefit here, Don. I think if anything, we end up with more scrutiny in the process. But we still welcome, I think, sort of input from community members and stakeholders on this point.
Thanks for that, Qasim. This next question is one for Dan, and it's a short one. It's, to what standards will the road be built? Dan, can you tackle that one for us?
Hi, for sure. Thanks. The standards that we're looking at are coined as geometric design criteria, and we're abiding by the TAC, the Transportation Association of Canada manual, as well as the MTO standards for provincial Ontario road frameworks. And so we're looking at the vertical alignment and horizontal alignment are details that are baked into those standards, and horizontal curves. And to that end, it's examining terrain types. Of course, we want to position the road on decent ground, but at times that, based on influences that we're discussing, has to be adjusted and pivoted. So to your question, mainly the TAC book and the MTO standards are what we're working towards.
Thanks for that, Dan. I've got a question here, and I think I'll get our project ecologist, John Plaisir, to answer this one. It's a bit of a general question, John, but I'm going to put it out there, and I'll let you figure out how to craft an answer for this one. The question is, how will the water, animals, and land be protected?
Well, that's a very good question. Thanks, Don. It's a very important one. Water, animals, fish, all these elements of the natural environment are protected under various laws and acts. And so as a project ecologist and a member of the ecology team for the project, it's up to us to do studies of all of these different natural components and ensure that we have enough information to ensure that any negative impacts that could occur to these elements are protected. So there's various regulations that we follow. Personally, I'm a wildlife biologist, and so a couple of the acts that we observe for this is the Endangered Species Act in Ontario, which protects threatened and endangered species. We also have the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act, which protects game species, and the Migratory Bird Convention Act, which protects birds and their nests. And so the studies that we do will indicate where the biggest impacts can occur for these species or these guilds of species, and then we can begin to apply mitigations based on how we think impacts might contravene these laws, so that these elements can be protected.
Thanks for that, John. This next one, I think we'll ask Brandon to tackle this one. And the question is, what do you do for consultation? You want to tackle that one, Brandon?
Sure. I'll give it a go there, Don. So great question. I guess to start, I guess the purpose of consultation is to promote effective two-way communications between Martin Falls First Nation and Webequie First Nation as the proponents of the project with Indigenous communities and stakeholders, both to present information as well as receive information back from the community to identify and address issues and concerns related to the NRL project. So to do that, there needs to be a variety and innovative consultation approaches taken. They can be things such as this virtual open house that we have tonight. If you visited the project website before this, there was the virtual open house with the presentation boards in the virtual setting that you could log into. There's social media streaming, one-on-one meetings with Indigenous communities or individual stakeholders, radio broadcast sessions that yourself and Qasim do on a bi-weekly basis, as well as virtual forums and online meetings. So the approach to consultation and what we're doing is really an innovative kind of holistic approach that we're trying to take to engage people in whatever way is easiest for them. And if people have other ways that they want to be engaged or they have ideas that we could do, we'd love to hear it. And you can find out more information about the consultation engagement we're doing for the project at the project website, northernroadlink.ca.
Thank you, Brandon. And next, let's move on now to a discussion of upcoming field programs. And I think we're going to start with Dan, and then I'll add a little bit to that, and then we'll move on to John after that. So maybe, Dan, you can talk a little bit about on the engineering side, activities done so far and what's coming up, whether it's in the field or in the office, maybe, Dan. But if you can just sort of give us an update on that, that would be great.
Sure, Don. So as mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have examined the past reports and studies that have occurred to date over the last number of years. We've also captured recently the LiDAR gaps that were present, and that's a light detection radar, the form of capturing imagery of the Earth, and as well as the surface imagery of the Earth to be able to generate models. We're taking some of the baseline studies and feedback from other exercises and listening to that, and already using that to help inform our decisions. Those corridors that you showed in the presentation on the maps, we're examining those based on terrain types and modeling those. And as well, the geometric design criteria that I mentioned earlier, we've had some internal project team meetings to decipher our approach and looking at the different options to be able to meet the intent of the road. Going forward, we'll be doing some geotechnical exploration, and to that end, again, filling some of the gaps of the previous studies, finding out a little bit about the Earth there and some of the water crossing sites potentially, and just gaining some general information of the lay of the land.
Thanks for that, Dan. Dan, we've received a number of comments on expressing concern about construction of the road through the James Bay Lowlands. And maybe you can explain to our viewers the kind of design considerations that will be made with respect to building the road through these challenging areas.
That they are, Don. Very challenging. And of course, the first approach is to try and avoid these areas. However, as you are able to navigate through the lay of the land, we are going to have to cross these areas. And we've learned through experience, through past construction projects, through scientific research and data, that there's a combination of approaches to designing roads through fens and bogs and swamps. Ultimate goal, of course, is to maintain that groundwater movement beneath whatever road is built. And to that end, it's past construction approaches have been to chase the shallow peat and organics where it's shallow. And however, this approach now is being replaced by rafting. And by that, the interpretation is to basically build the road over top of the organics and peat, and utilize that existing ground as a natural woven geotextile, again using products that are out there now, geogrids and non-woven geotextiles, depending on the application, and bridging. And we are cognizant that we typically experience 40% consolidation, settlement that is, after placing the embankment. And so in areas where you have shallow peat organic areas, you want to make sure that area isn't consolidated where you're you're cutting off that potential groundwater flow. And so those areas would be augmented or supplemented with culverts and additional drainage mechanisms. Areas where you do have larger depths of peat and organics, those areas we can raft over. And through past construction practices with piezometers and instrumentation, we've been able to model over 3-4 years of information gained that the water is equivalent on both sides. And that also gives some comfort to parties concerned with those types of water flow concerns and issues, and how we mitigate those items. So long story short, we now tend to raft over top of these areas opposed to chasing them, which causes construction headaches often with watering and dewatering issues. And we've just come to work with Mother Nature in this regard, and raft bridge over top of these areas. I'm hoping
Thanks for that, Dan. Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. That's really interesting, actually. I just thought now I'd add a little bit. Our geotechnical engineer wasn't available tonight, so what I wanted to do was do a quick summary of the activities you referred to earlier, Dan, our geotechnical field program, which is going to occur in April of this year over a period of 2 weeks. There will be drilling and monitoring well installation done. There's planned to be a total of, I think, 18 boreholes. And the purpose of this is to confirm and/or refine the location of the corridors as well as support environmental studies. Wells will not be installed at all borehole locations, but at some of them, at a subset of them, and they will subsequently be monitored for groundwater levels and quality as well, I believe. So soil and bedrock samples will also be collected as part of this work. So that's the geotechnical fieldwork update, the plan for April. Again, that's the plan right now. It may end up in May, but right now it's April. And right now, maybe we can move to John Plaisir, who can tell us a bit about the wide range of biological field studies that are going to be done this year. John, do you mind tackling that one for us?
Absolutely, Don. So 2022 will represent our second year of field study for the NRL project. And much of the study work that we're going to be doing in year number 2 will be a continuation of the work that we've been doing in year number 1. So year number 1, we did fish surveys, aquatic habitat surveys throughout the project, as well as botanical inventories. And these inventories have been in many different locations across all the different routing options that you showed in the maps earlier in the show. From a wildlife perspective, there's many different studies that will be ongoing their second year of study. We have bat acoustic detector units that have been set out in the many remote locations across the study area to capture bats, which are a very interesting, secretive, and also declining member of the local fauna. There are several bat species that are experiencing huge declines, and so putting out these acoustic recorders are going to help us determine whether and where these species are occurring. Other uses for a different set of acoustic recorders include recording songbirds. So we're going to have many recorders out in remote locations to record songbirds. This is very useful because not only they'll get recordings of birds that sing in the morning, but we'll also get birds that sing at night, like crepuscular birds like nighthawks, which are which are a federally threat or species of concern, and owls. These recorders can also record frogs and even howling wolves. And this is really important because a lot of the remote locations that we need to survey for this project we can't access on foot in the evening. So we get a lot of extra information from these recorders. That being said, we also do put boots on the ground. We have very capable and specialized biologists that go out and do bird surveys, both on the ground, and we do aerial surveys as well for waterfowl such as ducks, geese, and swans, and shorebirds as they pass through in the spring, in the fall during migration. We're also doing an aerial survey this year, in particular to survey for wolverine occurrence in the areas where these borehole locations are going to be that you mentioned earlier. All of these studies are also being done in concert with data that we're gathering from some of the other projects that we mentioned in the area, the Webquay Supply Road and the Martin Falls Community Access Road. We have the benefit in this project of learning from what's worked best for those projects, and we're able to learn from some of the background data that has been collected from those projects as well. So in 2022, we'll be able to continue the wide variety of stuff we have on the go as far as environmental surveys are concerned.
Wow, that's for sure, John. That's a long list of field activities you are going to be undertaking this year. So you're going to be busy. You and the whole team will be very, very busy. And I just noticed we have been joined by someone I didn't introduce earlier. She wasn't around at the time. She had another appointment. So I'd like to say hi to Charmaine McGraw. Charmaine, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Don. Thanks.
There she is. We have audio. I was worried there.
I apologize for being late, but had a other commitment. But yeah, glad to be here tonight.
No problem at all. Thanks for joining us. Charmaine is we're calling her an Indigenous participation specialist for tonight's broadcast. She works for a company called Immersive Link, which is helping us out on this project in terms of helping us try to encourage more community members to participate in the project. But I will let her explain that better than I can. So I'll hand it over to you, Charmaine, if you can just talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that you've been involved with so far in the project and where we're going next.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. So nice to see everybody today. It's a little bit warmer today and a little bit less snow, so that's good here in Thunder Bay. I work for Origin, which produced a product called Immersive Link. And what we do is we feature careers in a virtual environment so that people can be transported from their classroom, from their bedroom, from wherever they might be into a different career settings. So far with this project, we've created 3 career experiences. So one is a wildlife technician, one is a wildlife biologist, and we've also done environmental monitor. So what it is, it's like a day in the life of these careers. So one of the biggest things that I've found working in the north, and actually in communities across Canada, is that sometimes people aren't really sure about the career. They don't really know what it's like out in the different settings. They're not really sure if they can see themselves there. And what happens a lot of time is people get signed up for programs or signed up for a job, and then they get there and it's not what they expect. So the retention rate becomes really low. So this is about creating an experience for a person to be able to put a headset on, travel to that career wherever the setting might be. So for a wildlife technician, wildlife biologist, it's out in the bush. Well, there's a mix of bush and administration kind of stuff. You get to listen to a host, somebody that's been in one of those careers for a long time, and get to hear the different elements and aspects of the job. So far we've done the 3 that I talked about, and that kind of goes in line with what the previous speaker was talking about, and collecting kind of the stuff about the wolverines and, environmental monitoring, what that entails. And so the idea is that we will work with the communities involved in this project and work with their employment counselors or community leads, whoever it decides to be. And we will bring in headsets. We will kind of review how to do an intake process. We will get people to experience those careers, but we will also kind of help them align with something that matches who they are. So we use a process at Origin called First People First, and that's something that we've been working on for a long time. And it really puts the person at the center and determines the best career for them at that point. So I know I've been up to Webbequay. No, sorry, I've been up to Martin Falls, and some of the community members there were able to try out the headsets. We did not have the SNC experiences at that time. We do have them now, so I'm really excited to be able to get into community and start working with members that might be looking to participate in employment and try to find kind of a career path for them, so that not just in this project, but in further or in future times, that they'll be able to take this career and continue to build on it. So it's not just a one-time thing. It's about getting people into something that they can, really build a career around. The resource development in the north is rampant. So there will always be the need for environmental monitors. There will always be the need for the wildlife biologists and technicians. I know the next one that we're going to be filming is what does a community liaison do? So that will be another added experience specific to this project. So those are the 4 that we are focusing on right now, and there's more to come. So so it's super exciting. The way we do it is in a workshop format. So we have the funds to be able to travel into Martin Falls or Webbequay or host virtual workshops. So what I would do is I would send headsets up to the community. I would train a community lead on how to use them so that people aren't struggling with how to use the technology. And then I would run a virtual workshop, just kind of like we are doing today, kind of guide them through the process, the different opportunities, and then get them connected, get them in the headsets, see if it's a career that they might like to try, and then hook them up with the people that can give them the job. So if there are people in community out there that are interested or would like to host us, I know with COVID things are challenging, but as fully vaccinated, boosted person, we are open to either doing the virtual or the in-person engagement. Another potential thing to work with is community members in Thunder Bay. So if you're in Thunder Bay or in some of the urban areas and you have a desire to kind of work back home, please get in touch with us. We'd love to sit down and have some conversations with you around that. And trying to think, there's a couple of different initiatives that we're doing too right now with engaging youth in VR and film. So if you have youth in the community that are interested in learning about this as a career or career path, that's something that we'd love to do. We believe in mentorship at Origin. So even getting youth involved and understanding, the ability that this technology has to connect people, whether it be to culture, whether it be to understanding different topics, or connection to career like I'm talking about today. I would love to speak to any youth that are interested or that may be amateur filmers or things like that. We're always looking to get connected.
Well, thanks for that, Charmaine. That's a great description. And you mentioned you went up to Martin Falls. Did you? And we didn't have tons of time in the community, I guess, but you did have a chance to at least introduce it to community members, did you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say there was I think about 30-ish or 40-ish people when we went to Martin Falls, and I have a list of about 20 people that tried the headsets. So some of them were kids and youth, and that's super important because that's who ultimately we want to inspire to get connected to career. But there was people of kind of my age, I guess, that are looking for work and looking to get connected. So they were super interested, and it's amazing when you see them put the headset on. A lot of people can be really nervous when they put the headset on because they've tried a roller coaster experience or something like that. I just want to make sure that we reinforce to people that when you're in the headsets in our experiences, it's only about 3 to 4 minutes. We don't like to leave anybody in that VR space for too long, but it's very calm. It's not all crazy and shaky. It's not like you're going on a roller coaster ride. So it really is a very calm and learning experience about each of those careers. I've had people as old as 94 put the headset on and really experience some of the careers that we have in our careers library, and it really we get the same reaction from everybody. Once they're in the headset, they're like, wow, it's like you're standing right there. And it really is. So that's really what we want to do, is be able to recreate and bring those environments to people that might not have the ability to actually get to those spots. So just like, in classrooms, for example, a lot of the times they can't, or something will prohibit them from traveling, or safety, or just the inability to get to those locations. And the joy is with the immersive link headsets or the VR Oculus headsets, you can really go anywhere. We have career experiences from across Canada. We have cultural experiences from across Canada. And I think that's one other part of the project too that we haven't quite talked about yet, but Origin has been engaged to tell a story about your community. So over and over and over and over again, our communities are consulted. What's important to you? What should somebody understand when they're coming into the territory? And what we can do with the VR is create your community story. So that's something else that we would definitely be interested in talking to community members that are interested in participating in something like that. So that's just one other thing that we haven't really touched on yet in this piece of the project.
Thanks for that, Charmaine. And as you said, we've profiled 3 different jobs so far, and we're sort of working in sequential order. The idea being profiling jobs that that roles that could be performed sort of in the near term, as opposed to profiling jobs in construction. We'll be doing that, but that'll be a little further along in this process. But I think it provides a sort of a really sort of effective way of giving community members a real sense for what a project role would be like. And you know what? On the topic of visiting Martin Falls, I was thinking maybe we could show our video of the trip to Martin Falls that some of our project team made a few months ago. So if our technical team can bring that up, we will then, okay, they've got it. So let's watch a quick video on the project team's trip to Martin Falls. It's about 2-3 minutes long, and then we'll come back.
Second, hi Sunny. What do you want to be when you grow up?
A police officer.
Police officer.
I'd like to kind of go ahead and do his presentation. Welcome everybody coming in today, being part of the meeting.
A teacher.
Again, a lot of work has already gone into that, including a lot of feedback from our own Lawrence Baxter and others providing input on guiding that.
So as Qasim indicated, I'm gonna talk about the Martin Falls Access Road project and provide an update on the environmental assessment in terms of where we're at. And
We consider Ring of Fire our ancestral area, so we don't. We hope that we can resolve things with our First Nations.
See you tomorrow, Chief. Take care. Thank you so much.
Working with government and industry and other First Nations, we find a way to work on those issues that we have or that they may have.
Okay, we're back. Too bad I missed that visit, Mike. That would have been a lot of fun. Okay, before we move on to our final segment, discussing in a little bit more detail the comments received on the draft tour, I thought I'd show a video that was done a couple of years ago, I believe, for Webequie First Nation. And the video talks about the aspirations of community members. Specifically, in this case, I believe, Mike, it was the aspirations for an outdoor rink with some sheltered areas, some shelter from the wind. It's a really, really interesting video, and it gives you a sense for the community itself and what they're aspiring to. So maybe let's play that video, and then we'll come back with our final segment.
They're at the 11-minute mark in the third period.
Maple Leafs basic. Red Wings The
face-off will be in the leaf zone at this end.
Red Wings
You can hear them. Russell, Wares, Abel.
Maple Leafs.
And the Mets and John Mets. Clear it back to their own net.
For me, like my son will be in high school next year, and well, me and my husband were talking about it still, like it might be best for him to go to high school in Thunder Bay or anywhere instead of here because we don't have an arena and he wants to skate.
Actually, the old community of Webequie used to be a gathering place where all of the different families, while they were out during the winter, came back to the community, which was traditionally known as Kijibanika, which means at the end of the lake. And this is where our community members used to gather.
Like I had to wear long johns, I had to wear a sweater, a hoodie on top, and put all my gear. Sometimes it wasn't that comfortable, but at least I played hockey. So.
I try usually keeping this rink good every day. Usually come out and shovel, trying to do the edges. Yeah.
Is it hard to do conditioner down here?
Yeah, it's usually very cold and windy.
Yeah?
And snowy.
So you have to go out of town to condition, or?
Yeah, I just was gonna try and leave to an arena, but I can't get enough money.
Webequie is located roughly 527 kilometers away from Thunder Bay and is constantly told about the billions of dollars of value in their ring of fire.
We need an arena. Guys, look at it. Look at this whole place. It's filled with snow.
A market where people can sell their vegetables jogging, maybe track and field if possible, they can do that. Having a place where we can have either summer festivals or even winter carnivals, powwows, as well as hosting tournaments or even hosting regional conferences.
In particular this year, we're having issues with the weather, and also during the summer we don't have any place to go to, like when it's raining or anything like that. And it certainly would help to have an indoor sessions with the kids. You know, we need to be have them more active. Being active, gives them less likely to get into trouble or get into other mischiefs, that type. And we're plagued with mischiefs nowadays.
I mean, like, it's really cold during the winters, and it'd be good for kids. Less flus going around. A place to hang out most of the time instead of causing trouble.
Since I've been here for 1965.
It's been a long time I've been here. And I have been working in the education department for over 20 years now. And it's been over 30 years we've been trying to get the indoor rink.
Plus, most of these young boys we have here, they dream of going on the NHL. But with the rink we have here, it's impossible to do so.
If you could get everything you wanted, what would you want?
A Zamboni and seats in the stands. That's all. And dressing rooms.
If we can get this building here, like, it would really have a major impact on these youth, especially the youth. And also maybe they can try something else like curling in there, and say for the summertime they would play floor hockey there, play volleyball, or they can use that space for like dryland training and jogging around.
And I lost my oldest a couple years ago, but he was really into hockey. When he started skating when he was 3 years old, 4 years old, it didn't matter if it was blowing snow, -40, 30, for him to go skating. I know he had a couple of frostbites too.
Ekwa Don met where the panigot the Trevohan, panigot the neck able function. Ekwa man the panigot mina and give it you, steward. Ekwa panigot give it nigga.
That's the stuff you do in order for you to play hockey. Like, there's a bunch of us in same age as me. A bunch of us there, traveling out on the winter roads just to go play indoors.
I want an arena!
Yeah, we used to travel out to the nearby communities by skidoos.
Oh yeah, to go play?
Yeah. Closest one would probably be Summer Beaver.
Okay.
So we would drive out. A couple of buddies of mine, maybe like 5 skidoos. We get people to hop on the sleds.
Skate! So we could skate! So we could skate all day. So it won't be windy. And so we won't be cold.
What do you think about skating? Is it hard on your lungs to skate here? Tell me about what it's like to be skating -20.
It's hard to explain, but all I can say is it feels great.
And I'd like to see it being built in Webekwe as quickly as possible, because the arena can't be used during the winter time and also during the summertime.
in the arena?
Yeah, it's cold out here.
We lose a lot of young people too. On suicides, we have lost a lot of youths from the past. That's the reason I'm saying, and probably it's been said out already what I'm talking about. All I'm saying is nobody shouldn't be left out whatsoever.
Okay, we're back. I hope everyone enjoyed those two videos. They give you a little bit of insight into each of the communities. We'll have more of these, I think, as time goes on. And we've now reached sort of the final segment of tonight's event. And in that segment, we're going to dive a little bit more deeply into the draft tour comments. And I'm encouraging group discussion on this. But I think if Brandon maybe can kick things off. He has waded through a number of these comments and responded to a number of them and has gained a lot of insight, I would say, Brandon, from doing that.
Sure.
So maybe if you can just sort of kick things off and then hopefully we'll generate some discussion amongst us.
Yeah. Thanks, Don. So I've kind of, in preparation for tonight, I've kind of gone through a lot of the comments and kind of come up with some key themes and just put together maybe a bit of a kind of 2 or 3 discussion points that we as a group could chat through based on some of the comments received. So one of the kind of key themes that came through was we received several comments related to the tour phase of the project versus the EA phase of the project, and how those two phases differ. So perhaps we could spend a few minutes as a team just discussing kind of the difference between the tour phase that we're in now and how that's going to change as the tour moves towards approval and into the EA stage of the project. And I don't know who wants to start the conversation, but I think that was one of the key overarching themes that we saw, which was quite a few conversations, or in some cases a bit of confusion between the tour and the EA phase. So trying to iron out some of those details. I don't know if there's somebody who wants to dive in first or not.
No one has their hand up, I noticed.
That's okay. So I think maybe
there's just no hands featured on in our current setup, but I can start us off, Brandon, just to talk a little bit about the tour, because Dawn and I have been chatting quite a bit about the tour itself. So we did get the comment, but if our listeners tonight, if you log into our bi-weekly radio show, happens every Wednesday. I believe the time slot we have is 2:30 to 3:30 on Wawa Day. And then we've got our live stream happening through our website every Wednesday evening as well. So if you're sort of short of time and or you don't tune into the radio, you could do the live stream, which happens every second Wednesday, so bi-weekly at 4:30 for half an hour, and you can sort of log into the online stream where we talk about the tour process fairly regularly. Last week we talked about the federal process, which uses slightly different terminology, has slightly different deliverables, so 2 different processes. But the terms of reference within the Ontario process, in summary, in just a quick sentence, it's sort of a work plan for the work that we plan on doing in the environmental assessment phase. So the EA is the work that will take place once it starts. The tour talks about what that work will be. So it's just the work plan. And I'll sort of pause there, Brandon. If you wanna pick up on moving from probably the tour decision to the EA milestone, what happens? The notifications that are issued. How clear is that process?
Yeah, thanks, Qasim. So there will be, or later this spring, there's going to be an official tour release or proposed tour release stage where everything that's been done to date. Communities may recall that there was a draft tour release back in January, and that was an early kind of preview of what the proposed tour is going to look like. So that was an early engagement opportunity for communities and stakeholders to get a sense of what might be included in the terms of reference. And at some point later this spring, there's going to be a proposed tour release, which everybody will be notified about through official notices. And if you're on the mailing list, you'll be sent notification about it. And then the tour will get submitted for review to the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks for approval. And once approval happens, that's when the EA will kind of officially kick off. So, and again, there's another notice of commencement period or beginning phase of that EA where again notification goes out to everybody. And that'll kind of be the official transition from the tour phase that we're in right now. So we're currently developing that tour, and then the transition into the beginning of the EA phase will come with an official notice start. So that's
Brandon.
Kind of the transition would look like. Go ahead, Don. Sorry.
Thanks, Brandon. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Yeah, I mean, the tour, as Qasim mentioned, it's the work plan, and so it's the development of what is going to be done, of the work plan of what is going to be done during the environmental assessment. Then there's the EA phase, which is essentially the execution of the work plan. That's basically what it boils down to. So, but you're right, Brandon. We have received comments where there appears to be some confusion between the two phases, but that's sort of simply stated. That's really what it boils down to, I would say.
And Don.
And yes, Andrea.
Sorry, Don. So would you also say too, I mean, it's been really valuable getting the comments that we have from Indigenous communities, other stakeholders, agencies, because it helps us to really define what we are going to be studying in the environmental assessment part of the project. So these comments that we've been receiving have been very valuable. And as we've noted, we are working to provide responses to them, updating the terms of reference where necessary and where appropriate. But I guess I can't stress how valuable it is to receive this feedback. And it's just going to help us create a better environmental assessment process as we move forward.
It's so true, Andrea. I mean, our objective is to make this process as comprehensive, as robust as possible, and as responsive as possible to as many people as possible. So, I'm glad you pointed that out. Brandon, did you want to add anything to that, or did you want to move on to your next point?
I think that's a good segue for me there, Don. Actually, because the next point I had was several questions around how we were going to do engagement. And I know we touched on this earlier with some of the Q&As that we did at the very beginning, but there were several questions around the need for innovative approaches to consultation and engagement, especially in light of COVID-19, and how we were going to be shaping that both as we finalize the tour, but also as we move into the EA. And I was hoping I could pick on Mike a little bit, who's been doing some awesome media and social media advertisements and engagement techniques. And maybe Mike, you could quickly talk about kind of the innovative approaches we've been doing and hope to continue to do, and how people can access some of
that. Hi. Thanks, Brandon. We, with COVID, just prior to COVID, we were full out visiting communities. And Don, you were with us and some of your team members doing this. And then when COVID came, I think everybody had to get a bit innovative on how to disseminate information Number one, how to answer questions that are typically face-to-face questions. I would say, there's always this debate between high high tech and high touch. I think a lot of Indigenous communities are still high touch preference, face to face versus the high tech options that are out there. But we're trying to balancing that out. So, the first thing we did was Don and I, with Bay Media, started setting up live streaming events. So that we're able to still disseminate the information and provide some two-way communication channels with the community. And what helped in that sense was the province even stepped in with the communities and provided additional resources for them to get more satellite dishes. I think a lot of them got Starlink satellites, to enhance their communication abilities, not just for their own projects, but for the schools and for their programs. But I know that has helped a lot of the communities that are in the remote north to do the communication. So with that, we sort of laid out a whole menu of options with that. That included, if you can remember, we were in between these waves of COVID. So when the window opened a bit, we actually got into communities, and so we had those options, typical options of council, chief and council meetings, community information meetings, face to face, even smaller focus groups, and one to one for those that bumped into like the Northern Store or the community center, etc. Then we had to go into online, and so these live streaming events, as many others have done, started with Bay Media setting up at the Delta Hotel because we didn't have a studio at the time, and then doing social media strategy. So the social media strategy, there's different ways you can micro-target these communities. With Facebooks and other platforms that First Nations use, and so we develop a social media strategy to enhance the awareness of these events. So with micro media targeting, like on Facebook, you get these news feeds, and so when you micro target, and it's based on different parameters, you'll get the news feed advertising. So you started seeing the WSR and Northern, recently Northern Road Link ads come up on your news feed on Facebook, and then from there, there's usually a call to action to press and take you to the website or to the landing page, etc. So using the tools of social media, even though again the preference is high touch, in-person, face-to-face meeting, you had to use sort of the modern tools to reach out and connect with community members on that. One of the other things to complement the social media strategies that we got onto Wawate Radio and blocked hours of times to have live radio shows, and that was took me back to my DJ days of 20 something years ago when I used to DJ in nightclubs. But it was fun because suddenly I'm back behind the mic, and there's a listening audience of tens of thousands of people with Wawate in the remote communities. So from there, we created, that became our awareness campaign. So making the members of our target communities aware of our live streaming, and then opening up Q&A on the radio. And then actually, again, with Dave Media and our team at ICE here, we created commercials. And those commercials were just the lead up to the live streaming or to the radio shows. So it was a multi-pronged approach that we were doing. Lately, our latest product is sort of this virtual open house. You can see it on Northern Road Link -VR open house. And there you can actually, it's a we have an introduction by Marion that explains how to use the virtual open house, and then we have all our display boards that you would have seen today if we were in person at an open house. All the same material. And each of the material on each of the display boards has a comment box specific for that display board to share with the project team and others, and that gets fed into a Google form that we're collecting as those goes in. The other thing is the sign up with the emails. What we really saw lately is reaching out beyond the Wawate radio. We actually got into Thunder Bay regional radio. We paid for commercial ads for the Northern Road Link to create awareness again of this event this evening and tomorrow's event specifically for the general public, and so we've seen a spike in sign up for newsletters, the visits to the website, and there's a pretty high correlation that the effectiveness of the social media strategy prior to the social media strategy development, because I didn't know anything about social media. I hired a whole team of 4 now that all they do is social media around these projects. And when we looked back on the effect of the social media, so prior to the social media strategy, we tried, we're kind of stumbling and fumbling with how to do this outreach during the initial periods of COVID. But as soon as we started putting professionals in place around social media, I'm talking like real professionals, like not consumers of social media like me, in that we saw a spike in our to the website.
Yeah.
The downloading of documents, the watching of videos, like all the metrics typical for website usage and purpose on particularly project website. And each time we did the intensive social media strategy and the video, there was a pretty tight correlation between that and the project website information. So Day Media kind of monitors that for us and gives us monthly reports on that. So that's what we've been doing. I think in summary, Don, I can't think of anything else that we're.
No, Mike, if you don't mind, I just wanted to add to what you had to say there. I think you and I have both noticed in our visits to Webakwe in particular, because we had that window at the end of last year where we were able to visit Webakwe. You and I both noticed that the level of the questions we were getting when we were after giving presentations or during presentations had risen quite a bit, right? And I think that was the result. I mean, it wasn't because we had been there very often, that's for sure, because we hadn't been able to actually go to the community, but we were able to do these virtual sessions, and obviously people were listening because they were learning more about the process and asking better questions afterwards as well.
Let me add on that one, Don, because so just to make it a bit more practical so people understand, when we actually did chief and council virtual sessions, so with the council, and we also did community information session virtually. So the first one virtually as well as this one, and the community information sessions, we had a local person set up a PowerPoint presentation, just like a typical in-person presentation, set up the projector, and he set up his laptop, and then got the Wi-Fi, and we Zoomed, and Don and I did the presentation as if we were there. And with the PA system in place, so like the people that were in the actual hall were able to hear us pretty clearly. And when they asked questions, for whatever reason, they felt the need to go up to the laptop and just look in the camera and just wave, "Hi, I got a question," which they didn't really need to do, but they felt compelled to come up to the laptop, and it was no difference, than we were in person. Our faces were there, we were present, we were alive, and the community, and part of it is the comfort level, because Don and I has been there, many times in Webakwe, but. Yeah, so we were able to answer questions, and we had. That's what Don was mentioning, is that I don't know if because it was virtual or they didn't feel as intimidated or whatever, but there was a comfort level to the point where they're asking deeper questions than typical. So there was a deeper understanding of what's going on.
And Mike, just to add to that, I mean, some of these platforms, like the virtual reality open house platform that we've used for this open house, we can extend the functionality of that, and we're always looking to sort of improve. And we're planning on having sort of a deep thinking session to talk about how we can sort of take that virtual reality open house platform and another step forward, I think. And I know the team is actively looking at other features to add, such as real-time translation, and which is translation's a challenging challenging one, is because it's getting people that can translate in real time. So that's another area that we're sort of exploring, and we're going to start trying to roll out those kind of features as well too. So Brandon, I think you had a third one on your list.
I did.
We're running
but
out of time, so
I was going to say, I'm looking at the time here, and it might be more compelling for our viewers to tune in to tomorrow night's BIC to pick that one up.
Look at this!
I leave it up to you. Yeah.
Look, a little teaser for tomorrow night, Brandon. That's good.
Absolutely.
You've got a career in television. Yeah. Well, I think maybe we're at the point of almost wrapping things up. As I normally do, I usually look to Qasim for final thoughts. He's my final thoughts person. So, could I indulge you one more time, Qasim?
Delighted to oblige, Don. Just I think I want to leave our listeners with one final thought, that the TOR process is really the starting point of the overall environmental assessment process. We're in the process of writing up the work plan. You've got the opportunity and ability to provide comments which can help shape the work plan right now, and what we will do in the future. So please be in touch, whichever way, mechanism, form works for you. We would absolutely be very happy to be in touch with that mechanism, a phone call, social media. Once COVID restrictions go away, which they are going away shortly, meeting in person, whatever works. Absolutely would be very glad to chat and meet and discuss the project and get your insights and input, so we can improve and sort of build on the draft TOR that is available right now. But the last concluding thought really is, this is the start. This is the starting point. We're in the very early stages, and the process will go on for a few years, because we have to collect a lot of data in this process. And throughout that, from collecting the data, the type of data we collect, the results we formulate, we'll keep on coming back to Indigenous communities and to other stakeholders and agencies to get your input and feedback. From our perspective, one thing we've talked about today, which is essential for us as Indigenous proponents, is to get and receive Indigenous knowledge from communities directly, and to weave it with the baseline, the scientific findings that we get, and really come to develop an assessment which speaks to both Indigenous knowledge as well as the scientific facts that are collected through the studies we do. So Don, that's it. Those are the final words. Early in the process, lots more discussion in the future, and we very much look forward to it.
Thank you, Qasim, and thank you, Michael, and to all of our experts who provided their wisdom in this discussion tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. That concludes tonight's event, and as I said, we'll be back again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We'll go through the presentation, and then we'll have another discussion. But please contact us and provide any input. We can, if you have any comments or questions now, or if you want to email us or text us, we can address some of those questions, hopefully at the beginning of the session tomorrow night. And we look forward to seeing you again. And thanks for joining us. Miigwech.